Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So, today we are going to talk about that memo, that Department of Justice memo. We're going to talk about Merrick Garland's response to that memo. We're going to talk about the DOJ being apolitical. And we're going to talk about something I think Garland let slip that I think most people missed. Okay, so if you have no idea what I'm talking about, a memo surfaced. This memo says, hey, and it's directed to people in DOJ. If you're going to open an investigation into somebody who is politically sensitive, meaning somebody who has declared their candidacy for president or something like that, you need approval. Okay? It's not that these investigations can't happen. It's that somebody higher up in the organization has to say, yeah. Right? Okay, first, this isn't really a bombshell. Not really. Memos like this have been on record for years and years and years and years and years. That this isn't a new policy. And it's not really that big of a deal. The theory behind it, in case you're curious, is that the Department of Justice has to remain apolitical. Okay? Even the perception of partisan activity would undermine it. So they have to avoid that. So not everybody can just open up an investigation into a politically sensitive person. They need approval from higher up. That's the idea behind it. Okay? Now, whether or not you agree with that, that's a debate that you can definitely have. But that's why they exist. After the memo surfaces, Garland is asked some pretty specific questions because it was presented in the media very much as, well, Trump can't be investigated. So he's asked point blank, who can be investigated? And he says, nobody or no one in this country is above the law. And somebody shouts back, even a former president. And Garland is just kind of like, how many times are you going to make me say this? No one is above the law. Right? This is the soundbite. This is what's being shown on the media because it's the clearest representation of the entire discussion. Sure. However, it's not the most important piece of that discussion. Garland is asked in that same discussion why he decided to go with the little fish to big fish method of investigation rather than using something called hub and spoke, which is how you kind of get to a central figure in a conspiracy. And Garland, he's like, yeah, I can see this is a very leading question. And he goes on to say, the Department of Justice conducts its investigations in private. We know people are speculating. They can continue to speculate because we've talked about it on the channel before. These pieces of the Department of Justice's identity, Garland really believes in them. No leaks. This is who he is. Investigations are done in private, out of sight. When there's news, it's big news. And it's how he's conducted this investigation so far. And he makes a point of saying all of this. But he also says this, and this conversation, to be clear, is specific to Trump. There's no ambiguity here. He says, this is the most wide-ranging and most important investigation in DOJ's history. Wide-ranging is really important there because we know what the most wide-ranging investigation in DOJ's history is. It's the events on the ground at the Capitol on the 6th. In Garland's mind, an investigation into Trump is part of what happened at the Capitol that day. Meaning an investigation into Trump isn't limited to the electors thing. It's not limited to a phone call to Georgia. It's not limited to a pressure campaign on Pence. In Garland's mind, it ties him directly to the events on the ground there at the Capitol. that is honestly the most hopeful thing I have ever heard come out of his mouth. He's tight-lipped. He doesn't say a lot. I don't think that he misspoke. That's how he views the investigation. Which means that the entire thing, everything, is being treated as one conspiracy. Which means if it means that there are people who are, I don't know, perhaps in Congress, maybe used to be in government, that should be pretty concerned. Now, so there's some hopeful stuff right there. We now know how Garland views it. At the same time, it's a mixed bag, because Garland does really believe in this apolitical orientation of the Department of Justice. And sure, I mean, that's how it's supposed to work. However, he has to understand that even though an investigation or an organization might be apolitical, that doesn't mean that politics can't influence it. The reality is he has less than half a year to wrap this up and do whatever it is he's going to do. Because if it goes beyond that, it becomes partisan, whether or not he wants it to. He's running against a clock. Now, do we know what he wants to do? No. And we probably won't know until he decides it's going to be public. That statement, though, leads me to believe that that the Department of Justice is pursuing it as a criminal matter against Trump, and that investigation leads to the events of the 6th on the ground that day. Because if it had been broke off, it wouldn't be the most wide-ranging investigation. It wouldn't be part of that. Now, that may be how Garland views it. We don't know. At the same time, there are a whole lot of people who want to protect the institution of the presidency, who believe in that identity, the same way Garland believes in making sure DOJ is apolitical. And there are people who would go through a lot to limit the embarrassment to the Oval Office as an institution. Now that I definitely think is faulty. I think that is a faulty thought process. So, at the end of this, the memo doesn't really mean much. Not really. Garland has made it clear that in this investigation they're going to go wherever the facts lead them. Now, you could say that that's just political posturing, and maybe it is. No one's above the law. That sounds really good. But then there's that bit about the widest ranging investigation. I take that as pretty hopeful. But, like a whole lot of this, we just have to wait and see. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.